Online, it often feels like China has already become a country full of electric cars. But in the small town where I live, things don't feel exactly the same. Hi, I'm Zhang. I live in a small county town in China with my kids. It's just past noon. I've just dropped my kids off at school. While I have some free time, I decided to take a walk around. At this time of day, there are usually quite a few cars on the road. Sometimes, as I walk, I find myself watching them. And recently, I started paying attention to one simple question. How many of these cars are actually electric? In China, it's very easy to tell. Electric cars have green license plates, and gasoline cars have blue ones. If you stand by the road for a while and just watch the cars pass by, you'll probably notice something very simple. Most of them are still blue. Of course, you do see some green plates too. Sometimes they pass by very quietly, almost without any sound. But the feeling is they are increasing, but they're not the main part yet. In the past few years, things have definitely been changing. Especially during holidays, when more people come back. You suddenly see a lot more electric cars on the streets. Here in our town, there are already many different EV brands. People know names like BYD and Xiaomi. And there's something interesting. Tesla is also quite popular here. Some people feel that if you're buying an electric car, a Tesla somehow feels like a more premium choice. Prices vary a lot, from around $6,000 for very small cars to $50,000 or more. But for most families like ours, people usually look at something around $20,000. To be honest, I've thought about it too. Especially in recent years, gas prices haven't been cheap. Sometimes when I'm filling up the tank, I catch myself thinking, maybe we should switch to an electric car someday. Because in terms of daily costs, it really is much cheaper. Here, electricity prices depend on the time of day. During the day, it's about 8 cents to 15 cents per kWh. And at night, it can drop to around 4 cents to 0.07. So a lot of people wait until nighttime to charge. One of my neighbors installed a charger at home. He told me it cost him around 4 cents per kWh. He once said something that really stayed with me. Now when I drive, I don't really worry about the cost anymore. And honestly, that part is very appealing to me. But when it comes to actually making a decision, I still feel a bit unsure. One time, I saw a car charging in an underground parking garage. The driver was just sitting inside the car, waiting. And at that moment, I thought, if I were there with my kids, would I feel that this is a bit inconvenient? Then there's insurance. I've asked a few people who own electric cars. They all said something similar. It's a bit more expensive than gasoline cars. Here, a regular gasoline car might cost about $400 to $700 a year for insurance. Electric cars are usually about $150 to $300 more. Some people even say You save on fuel, but you spend some of that on insurance. Another thing I think about is depreciation. In a small place like ours, people don't change cars very often. A car is something you might use for many, many years. I've heard people say, a gasoline car can last over 10 years, no problem. But with electric cars, I'm not sure about the battery. And honestly, hearing that kind of thing does affect how you think. There's also a more direct concern. Safety. I've seen videos online of electric cars catching fire. And after watching those, it's hard to say you feel completely comfortable. I talked about it with my family once. Their reaction was very simple. Is it safe? Especially older family members. They tend to worry more about these things. Then there's the question of convenience. Charging stations are definitely increasing. There is even a large new charging station built near my home this year. But compared to gas stations, there are still fewer, and not everyone has a fixed parking space. If you can't install a charger at home, then finding a place to charge every day can feel a bit troublesome. So, in our town, you'll notice something. Many people who buy electric cars already have the conditions to make it easier. There's also something interesting. Some people who already bought electric cars actually tell others to wait. They'll say, maybe give it another couple of years. It might get better. Sometimes I think about this. Why do people in big cities and people in small towns make different choices about the same thing? And slowly, I feel like it's not really about understanding technology. It's more about how we think about the future for families like ours. When we make a decision like buying a car, we think about the long term. For example, if one day I'm out alone with my kids and something happens, can I handle it by myself? If we're going to use this car for many years, how will it affect our daily life? So if I had to choose right now, to be honest, I think I would still lean slightly toward a gasoline car. Not because electric cars aren't good, but because I'm not fully comfortable yet. But at the same time, I can clearly see that electric cars are becoming more common. It's just that here, the change feels slower. Maybe in a few years, when charging becomes easier and people feel more confident, electric cars will truly become the main choice. But for now, in a small town like mine, people like me are still watching and slowly making our decisions. Sometimes I feel like the difficult part is not knowing what the future is. It's when the future arrives in front of you. Are you ready to make that choice together with your family? What about where you live? Are electric cars already part of everyday life? Let me know in the comments.
拜拜。